Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Passimian. So Passimian is going to be a pure fighting typing, which makes it pretty easy on us because it looks like this. We have 3 weaknesses and 3 resistances, so we will be weak to flying, psychic, and fairy type attacks, and we will resist rock, bug, and dark. So that's kind of it. Everything else is a neutral hit, and we have no immunities, so GG right there. And then looking at the fighting typing offensively, fighting offensively is really good, that we have 5 types that we hit for super effective damage, and these are some really solid typings that we want to be hitting. Dark and normal, they have a few weaknesses, so that means we're going to be able to coverage out against them, and then steel type Pokemon resist so much that it's really nice to have like fire or fighting kind of tech for them to deal with steel types in that way. However, we trade that great super effective coverage by also being resisted by quite a few typings as well, with bug and poison kind of being the strange ones, and then we can't hit ghost type Pokemon at all. And as for flying, have you ever tried to punch a bird? And then it's time to look at Passimian's stats. So these are weird is what I have to say. Like 120 attack is good on a fighting type Pokemon. That means we can like expect the close combat, we can expect some damage right there. That's gonna be pretty nice. The hit points at 100 hit points and 90 defense is going to be surprisingly defensively tanky, even without a lot of hit point investment or any kind of defensive investment. We're just gonna be able to tank up a lot of those very common moves right there, so we really only have to worry about super effective hits. The 60 special defense with the 100 hit points is better than nothing, and then the 80 base speed. That's where things are going to start getting complicated when we like look for speed stuff, because if we had a 120 attack sweeping fighting type Pokemon, that's where the damage ranges start getting pretty good. But at that 80 speed, we're at risk of getting outsped, we're at risk of losing a lot of our momentum. So let's go on over to Cerebi and see what else is going on with the Passimian. So it has one ability at this time, and it is going to be the receiver ability. Pokemon copies the ability of a defeated ally, so it's only usable in doubles on that ability. However, the Defiant ability, when that becomes available, could be very useful both singles and doubles. That if you get intimidated, well, Intimidate's a pretty popular strategy in doubles, since if you have a physical attacker and you can just lock them out of their attacks from that Intimidate, that works out pretty well. But Defiant will actually make Passimian stronger. So something to consider right there once we find out how the hidden ability ends up becoming available. Other than that though, the coverage and the attacks that Passimian gets, it's not super hopeful. I feel like this Pokemon is going to be like sequel version or sometime down the road whenever we get move tutors again, because we need the Drain Punch. We don't learn or get Drain Punch as an egg move, so that sucks right there. Also, we need elemental coverage. We don't have any Ice Punch, we don't have any Fire Punch. That pretty much we get Iron Head, we get close combat, and then that's kind of it. Like, the Earthquake is really nice because we do pick up the Earthquake, but as for other coverage, it's pretty much gamble on the close combat. So that means we're pretty much just going to be throwing out close combats, but then that goes against our stats, because the reason why we have low speed is because we also have some pretty decent defensive bulk. Well, what's the point if we're just throwing that away for getting extra damage on the close combat? But then, by comparison, the Brick Break is not going to threaten an opponent at all, unless it's in doubles. They already have screens up, but Light Screen Reflect is not a super common strategy. Also, another thing I wanted to look into were some other abilities, because it has the receiver ability, that if we're thinking doubles, we're thinking combos, what happens when this Pokemon gets access to all of the abilities in the game? Well, unfortunately, because of the moveset and because of the stats, there's nothing that screams, yo, Passimian needs this ability. That there's no real status game to it. That's an offensive Pokemon that has to sacrifice its bulk for damage, so I'm not thinking Prankster is going to do much of anything. We don't have any kind of flying typing, or we don't have an ice typing, so the 8 abilities, like, we can't pixelate on this guy because we're not getting as much boosted damage as we need. And then I was thinking, like, Tough Claws kind of works, but a lot of Pokemon, you also have to realize that you're giving up that Pokemon. That, say we have like Mega Aerodactyl. So Mega Aerodactyl seems like one of the best contenders for giving Passimian something, because it can like set up Tailwind, and then it dies, and then Tough Claws is given to you. That's also the other problem, is that you have to play super safe and make sure you don't die, and then you also want your ally Pokemon to faint. That way you can gain its ability, and then maybe even be less useful than that Pokemon that had the ability, because it just really doesn't translate super well with the way that Passimian is just designed, which is fairly unfortunate. So let's go over into Pokemon Showdown and check out how Passimian is going to run. So I was looking, like, first thing I was looking into, Choice Scarf. That once Defiant becomes available, like Choice Scarf Defiant, I think that is going to be the best way of running Passimian. That this whole receiver identity, as I mentioned, it kind of falls apart. So what you want to do is you just want to lead it hope the opponent goes for an Intimidate at some point, you catch them off guard with a Defiant, and now you have a +1, 120 attacking Pokemon that has a Choice Scarf on its speed, which means it's outspeeding tons of other Pokemon, and that's kind of all there is to it. Like, once you hit a +1 close combat on 120 attack, very few things are going to survive that, even neutrally, and then our defense drop doesn't matter because we're killing everything. Problem, though, if we're running in doubles. Like, close combat in doubles is so difficult to run because, alright, we knock out one of the opponent's Pokemon, and unless we're doing something like Fake Out on that first turn or we're trying to really shut down that other opponent, well, then they just pick up the revenge. Like, oh, he's going to close combat, I might lose my Pokemon, but then he has less defenses, so he's going to be easy to KO as well. That's kind of a problem. Other than that, we have some other coverage. Run the Earthquake, run the Iron Head, have U-turn just in case you don't get the Intimidate fish and you want to chip in some damage while popping out. That's kind of it. So 120 attack on close combat is really all that Passimian boils down into, because after the close combat, you're just kind of frail and you don't have an insane amount of speed. Iron Head is kind of like a last-ditch effort because you don't want to be in against Fairy-type Pokemon and then a non-stab Iron Head with 120 attack and no damage item. You're not going to do well against that. It has to be an already very low Pokemon that's going to eat that super effective Iron Head. If not, Passimian just does not want to be in that situation. Looking into some other things, I was like, what about Bulk? Like, if we max out its hit points, if we max out the attack, we can run Bulk up, we can gain defenses, we can become a defensive tank, but then there's no real point of running the close combat because, well, if we're investing and we're trying to be tanky and we don't have any speed, so we're not outspeeding anything, then how's that close combat going to work? And it kind of shows that maybe there is a little bit of combo that you bulk up, you Earthquake or Iron Head something for super effective damage, you KO it, then you close combat for the KO, and then you just give yourself up. But that's still fairly risky right there. The only item I see really working would be the Citrus Berry in this situation, or maybe just the Bright Powder to troll because I don't see anything happening. Now, where Passimian has the chance of taking off is if it ends up with the Drain Punch, as I mentioned, in future generations. So really, Passimian's going to be a keep an eye out on this Pokemon, because maybe if it gets like some crazy tutor moves, we can find more to do with the receiver ability. Once it gets Defiant, then it's going to be usable. Once it gets Drain Punch, then it's going to be doing a lot better. If we had access to that, the special defense is still a big issue. But I mean, if you have like Bulk Up, Drain Punch, you're not going for too many KOs, and you still have enough damage to heal up off of, then maybe we can do something like this. Gives us enough special defense kind of survive. We can survive into Bulk Up, we can use our Citrus Berry, and then we can Drain Punch things back. That's kind of it. Passimian, unfortunately, doesn't get the Endure either. Like, this seems like a really solid Pokemon that, if it got Endure, we could go for Salac Berry instead of Choice Scarf, and then we have our coverage, and we still have good amounts of damage. We can, like, bulk up, Endure, Salac Berry, and that would be super sick. But, Passimian, no Endure, none of that fun stuff, so I don't really know what to say. Other than that, I was looking into some doubles stuff that it wants to do. So Passimian does have some good utility in doubles, but then this is going back to the whole, like, receiver ability. Okay, what are we going to grab that's going to make the most out of this, and how are we going to combo with it? That's why I was looking, like, as weird as it is, like, you Tailwind, and then Aerodactyl is also kind of in the position that you want it to be in, because it's frail enough to where it'll die kind of soon, so if it survives that first turn on the Tailwind, it can then pressure with some damage options. That's actually pretty nice, because 135 attack, Tough Claws, Aerodactyl can add on to that in a pretty solid way, and also because of, like, Stone Edge and Rock Slide, Aerodactyl doesn't make the most out of Tough Claws, so you're kind of giving Tough Claws to Passimian so it can make use of it. But then 1.3 times damage on close combat, we're in doubles, we're still frail, we might not find all the KOs. That's why I feel like it's just kind of weirdness. Now on Pokemon Showdown, you can search by abilities. So Tough Claws, yeah, we have Aerodactyl, Charizard X, Metagross, and then Barbaracle. And I feel like the Pokemon that you're giving up, it would use the ability about the same as Passimian, if not a little better. And I was just kind of looking at it, Passimian most compares to Primeape, that we have a close combat Pokemon, so slightly less damage, but slightly more speed. So the idea behind Primeape, it's a Defiant Pokemon, you Scarf it, you hope that you get that Intimidate happening, and then you kill everything with a close combat. Passimian just kills everything a little more with more attack and then less speed. So it depends on how much value you put into Primeape. Also going back into the supportive capabilities of Passimian, it has Feint, it has Quick Guard. So I mean, you can stop priority, you can stop their Protect, which means that your ally Pokemon, it's weird, like, if anything, Passimian should be seen as an insurance policy, that your ally Pokemon wants to make sure it's connecting moves on the opponent, so you can kind of feint, chip a very tiny amount of damage, and then secure the KO, but at the same time, Passimian, it's going to be vulnerable, your allied Pokemon's going to be vulnerable. If you use Close Combat, you're going to be close to dying. If you use Rock Slide, that's going to be some problems right there, which is why I feel Tailwind is also something you really need. That way you can at least like go for the max hit point investment. You can try to get some attack in there. You can do your little turns of setup, you know, Close Combat on that first turn because you know you're going to be slow. Then second turn you're faster, so you can use Rock Slide to try to get some flinches or some extra damage, secure KOs on the Close Combat. Hope you don't faint, and that's kind of it. Maybe Focus Sash if you are going to be throwing out the Close Combat, but then that gets away in the way of your hit point investment, so you might as well go Speed. I don't know. Like, that's what I mean. The story behind Passimian is its identity is very awkward right now. Once we get tutors, once we get the ability, maybe we'll get some extra things out of Passimian. Right now, it's kind of tricky to use, which is why we're not seeing it. Even though when we first saw it, yo, Receiver's gonna be the most broken thing ever, and then the more you look into it, pure fighting type Pokemon without insane coverage, what is it going to make use of? It's not like a super sustaining tank either. That was like a very tanky Pokemon. Maybe we could find some kind of hilarious ability to put onto that, but I'm not really feeling it right now. As for some damage calculations, let's go and see where the potential of Passimian lies. And also another reason why I kind of sound pessimistic in this video, because I've already run the damage calculations. I have this set up right here, and pretty much it's cool. We two-shot Garchomp. That's it, except there's a lot of problems just behind simply 2-hit KOing a Garchomp, because we're going to be at -1 defense, because this is Scarf Set. So Adamant, Max Attack, Scarf Set right here. We use Close Combat on the Garchomp, we do 60%. So our 120 attack, no offensive item, Close Combat, biggest damage we got, doesn't really translate into much, and then Garchomp kills us because of the Close Combat drop. So that's the story right there, is that we don't KO it, it KOs us. And that's just a neutral hit from the Garchomp, so ignoring the Fairy-type Pokemon that scare us, the Flying-type Pokemon that scare us, all the type Pokemon that are very scary for us, it's not really looking that good. Let's see what Staraptor, because Staraptor, if it's Scarfed, it's just going to outspeed us and destroy us, but at least on that neutral Close Combat, we have something. So if it's going to be like a flying normal Pokemon, or just a neutral hit in that 85 hit points, 70 defense range, or, you know, 85, there's like a lot of areas where we're going to be doing alright on these neutral Close Combats. But once a bulky attacker comes into play, it's going to be really bad. And the problem about the 7th generation is that there's a ton of bulky attacking Pokemon. Let's go and bring in something like the Lurantis. Lurantis, like the Leaf Blade at -1 is doing insane amounts of damage, and we can at least tank one Close Combat. And also that means you're going to be very predictable at that point. Bring in a Ghost-type Pokemon, bring in a Pokemon that resists you, and then your damage drops off, you're super frail. That's just kind of the story right there. Like, Lurantis isn't even seen as like a super hard-hitting Pokemon. What happens if it has the Life Orb? Like, does Life Orb really start putting us into... Well, that was Lychee Berry. Does Life Orb really start making it scary? Almost a KO on the Leaf Blade. That's scary to think about. Choice Band. If it's a Choice Band, just sit in there, Lurantis. Boom. That's going to be very problematic for you right there. What about a Modest Nature? I know this is kind of like bad form that I'm just randomly looking at things right now, but I'm just thinking like, oh yeah, there's all these bulky attackers out there. What's a bulky attacker people are thinking about? You know, Lurantis, I want to see the Leaf Storm. Leaf Storm's high base power. It does 76% and then -1. So even if you're going up against a special attacking Lurantis, you Close Combat, Lurantis is going to survive, and then it hits you with a Leaf Storm, you die, and now it's at +2. And I wouldn't say it has a good amount of hit points, but still in some kind of safe range. And if this is doubles and it's like Trick Room Lurantis or something, now you just gave the opponent the opportunity to like sweep, and that's scary to think about. Against Silvally, we find a super effective Close Combat to be a KO, but once it's a neutral hit, damage drops off. You know, that's moral of the story right here. That's just looking into some other things, like what about our hit points? Is our hit point defense combo even good? Because pretty much with Passimian, if you are going for like some kind of bulk, or you're just like bulky attacker, max out hit points, max out the attack, try to do your best right there. But the Close Combat, because I mean, if we're using anything other than the Close Combat, all the damage is going to be absolutely laughable. Let's see what we have right here. So Close Combat, Earthquake, that's 26%. That's 30% against a Silvally. And then if we look at it, Brick Break's not going to be much more damage than that. And like, that's it. We're doing 45% to a Silvally, and then, yeah, I don't know. So those above average tanky Pokemon, if we're not Close Combating them, well then we're not doing enough damage to even make them be scared at all. So very overpowered moves, like we have the Wood Hammer, Adamant Meadow Plate from a Tapu Bulu in the grassy terrain. That's enough to KO the Passimian, but even if it's like not grassy terrain, it's still doing good amounts of damage. You got Horn Leech, not quite a 2-hit KO, but it's healing up a lot of the damage. Close Combat, since we're a Fairy-type Pokemon, isn't doing a lot. Wood Hammer is converting damage. So just kind of showing that, yeah, those 120, 130 attack Pokemon using a solid stab move, even against our hit points and defense, that's going to be very terrifying right there. Other Pokemon that just have higher stats. We have Wishy-Washy right here as a special attacker, two-shotting us on a Scald, or after, you know, and then we also have to factor in what happens after that -1. And then after that special defense drop, you know, Hydro Pump's going to be a KO, Scald still insane amounts of damage. We have a chance of burning right there. For the Citrus Berry on the Wishy-Washy, you know, 51% chance to KO after the Citrus Berry recovery. It also depends on what the Wishy-Washy is invested into. Like, what about if we have 252 on the hit points and then 252 on these special attacks? That's just like a weird little set right there. So Scald could do something, and then that drops down to a 35% chance to KO. Like, the matchups just get kind of weird. Like, I'm not here to be like, Wishy-Washy is better than Passimian, but I'm just kind of showing you the different ranges at which things start working and stop working for you. What happens if it's Surf Wishy-Washy? You know, that's an option if it just wants more damage. So in single battles, that's going to be a high chance to KO after that close combat. So really, Passimian, like, it's more identity issues. It can't use that close combat because it sacrifices the bulk, and the bulk exists so it can't have enough speed to be threatening. It loses attack stats. There's fighting Pokemon that do very similar things. It doesn't have a full move pool, doesn't have all of its abilities, and passer and receiver ability just doesn't work. So there you guys go. Just looking at everything about Passimian, I couldn't come up with much, and I think it shows why. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.